The human tide surged through the stars, teeming into the cold void of the Centauri sector. Kevin Wells glanced over at his mining team and nodded. They finished up their work, digging rare ores out of the rocky surface of Proxima Centauri b. The IMC mining vessel remained docked nearby, ready to return to base. Suddenly, Wells's communicator flashed with a priority distress call from the research station, orbiting the planet. His brow furrowed as he played the garbled transmission. "This is Dr. Koenig artifacts, not what they seem." Horrific screams drowned out the rest of the message. Wells' face paled. Dr. Koenig had been investigating ancient alien ruins on the planet. Something bad had happened. "Saddle up, boys," Wells barked at his team. "Research station is in trouble. We're the closest help. Gear up and get to the shuttle." The miners quickly grabbed weapons and boarded the landing craft. As a hardened veteran, Wells had a grim feeling about this. But he couldn't ignore a distress call. Not when lives were at stake. The shuttle touched down in the station's hangar. An eerie silence filled the deserted corridors, broken only by occasional sparking cables. Strange green blood splattered the walls. Broken alien devices littered the floors. Wells and his men crept through the abandoned labs with weapons ready. The stench of death clogged the recycled air. They found Dr. Koenig's log, detailing the discovery of the Zanari Codex. The final entry cut off with blood-curdling shrieks. Suddenly, a nightmarish creature burst through the far door. The alien warrior shrieked, firing plasma blasts at the humans. Wells dove for cover, returning fire, but the aliens' technology far outclassed their own. One by one, the miners fell, flesh sizzled by searing plasma. Wells snatched up a grenade and lobbed it. The explosion bought him seconds to sprint for the shuttle. He barely escaped as the creature's furious howls chased him. Wells punched the accelerator, rocketing back toward the mining ship. His heart raced. He needed to warn the IMC about this deadly new threat, but as he approached the colony, his stomach dropped. A menacing fleet of alien warships surrounded the planet, cutting off all communication with Earth. Humanity now stood alone against the Zanari's wrath, and it was up to Kevin Wells to sound the alarm before it was too late. The survival of the human race hung in the balance. This fight had only just begun. Kevin's grip tightened on the controls of the stolen mining vessel as he racked his brain for a plan. The Zanari fleet loomed just outside the viewport, an imposing wall of sleek alien metal between him and any chance of warning Earth. He had to find a way through. "All right, listen up," Kevin said, his voice cutting through the tense silence on the bridge. "We've got one shot at this. Boomer, I need you to divert all power to engines and shields. We're going to punch a hole through their blockade and make a run for it." The burly engineer nodded, his face grim. "Aye, Captain, I'll give her all she's got." As Boomer worked frantically at his console, Kevin turned to the rest of his hastily assembled crew, a motley assortment of miners and technicians. "The rest of you, man the gun turrets. We're going to need every bit of firepower we can muster." The mining vessel shuddered as Boomer pushed the engines to their limits. Kevin aimed the ship at the weakest point in the Zanari formation and gunned the thrusters. The blockade opened fire immediately, plasma bolts sizzling past the cockpit. But the mining vessel's heavy armor held, and they slipped through the gap in the alien lines. "We're not out of this yet," Kevin warned as the Zanari warships whirled to pursue them. "Keep those turrets firing." Space lit up with the crisscrossing trails of plasma and tracer rounds as the running battle unfolded. The humans fought with desperate skill, weaving between the alien ships and returning fire whenever they could. But the Zanari pressed their advantage, hammering the mining vessel's shields with relentless bombardment. Just as Kevin was about to plot a hyperspace jump to safety, alarms blared throughout the ship. "Hull breach in Section 4, Boomer shouted over the din. "We've got boarders." Kevin swore under his breath. He should have known the Zanari would try to capture them rather than blow them out of the sky. "Repel them," he ordered, unholstering his sidearm. The crew rushed to meet the invaders as they poured through the breach. In the claustrophobic confines of the ship's corridors, humans and Zanari clashed in brutal close-quarters combat. Mining lasers flashed, plasma scorched metal. Both sides fought tooth and nail, neither giving quarter. Kevin found himself face to face with a towering Zanari warrior, his eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. The alien's name came to him in a flash of recognition: Varys, the leader of the boarding party. They traded blows in a savage dance, human agility against Zanari strength. All around them, Kevin's crew was falling one by one, overwhelmed by the superior numbers and technology of the Zanari. Boomer fought like a man possessed, using his bulk to shield the wounded, but even he could not stem the tide. In a moment of desperate clarity, the engineer met Kevin's gaze across the melee. An unspoken understanding passed between them. Boomer nodded once, then turned and charged deeper into the ship, bellowing for the Zanari to follow him. Kevin rallied the survivors and fell back toward the bridge, sealing blast doors behind them. Moments later, a deep rumble echoed through the hull as Boomer detonated the mining charges he had planted in the breached section. The Zanari boarders were consumed in a blast of fire and shrapnel. Choking back his grief, Kevin ordered the remaining crew to their stations. They limped away from the engagement, Boomer's sacrifice buying them the time they needed to escape. As the mining vessel fled toward Titan, Kevin slumped in his chair, his thoughts racing. The appearance of the Zanari here could be no coincidence. The discovery of the Zanari Codex on the research station had drawn them like moths to a flame. And now, with blood already spilled between their races, Kevin knew that a full-scale invasion of human space was only a matter of time. He had to find a way to stop them before it was too late. The secrets locked within the Codex were the key. But first, he had to reach Titan and sound the alarm. The survival of humanity itself hung in the balance. Kevin's battered mining vessel limped into Titan's orbit, its hull scarred from the desperate battle with the Zanari. As they approached the IMC headquarters, a squadron of heavily armed security ships surrounded them, ordering them to stand down and prepare for quarantine. Kevin and his exhausted crew were escorted into a secure facility where they were subjected to a battery of medical tests and interrogations. The IMC's Board of Directors and the Earth Defense Council convened an emergency meeting to hear Kevin's report. "I'm telling you, the Zanari are real and they're coming for us," Kevin insisted, his voice hoarse from fatigue. He laid out the evidence, the distress call from the research station, the alien artifacts, the devastating attack on the mining colony. "We need to mobilize our defenses now before it's too late." But as Kevin looked around the room, he saw skepticism and disbelief etched on the faces of the board members. And then, to his horror, he noticed something else, a glimmer of recognition in the eyes of a few individuals, including Marcus Keller, the CEO of a rival corporation. "Mr. Wells, your story is quite fantastical," Keller said smoothly, his voice dripping with condescension. "A previously unknown alien race, a secret codex, a galaxy-spanning conspiracy. It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel." Other board members murmured their agreement, casting doubtful glances at Kevin. He felt a sense of dread settle in his gut as he realized the truth. Some of these people were already in league with the Zanari. "You have to believe me," Kevin pleaded, but it was too late. Security guards seized him roughly, dragging him away as Keller and his allies denounced him as a traitor and a madman. The last thing Kevin saw before the doors slammed shut was the triumphant smirk on Keller's face. As Kevin was being transported to a secure holding facility, his mind raced with desperate plans for escape and vindication. But just as he was about to give in to despair, the door to his cell hissed open, revealing a lithe figure in a dark jumpsuit. "Kevin Wells?" the woman asked, her voice low and urgent. "My name is Arya. We don't have much time. I'm here to get you out." Kevin blinked in surprise as Arya deftly unlocked his restraints and pressed a weapon into his hands. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What's going on?" "I'm part of a resistance movement," Arya explained, as they slipped through the corridors of the detention center, avoiding patrols with practiced ease. We've been fighting against the Zanari infiltrators for years, trying to expose their manipulations and stop their plans. She led Kevin to a hidden base deep in the heart of Titan's industrial complex, where a small group of rebels had gathered. Among them was Dr. Lena Sorensen, a renowned xenobiologist who had been studying the Zanari Codex in secret. The Codex is more than just a record of their history, Dr. Sorensen explained, her eyes alight with a feverish intensity. It's a blueprint for their conquest, a guide to undermining and subverting other civilizations. They've been doing it to us for decades, and we never even realized it. As the resistance members pored over the fragments of the codex they had managed to decipher, a chilling picture began to emerge. The Zanari's infiltration of human society was far more extensive than they had ever imagined, and their endgame was nothing short of the total subjugation of humanity. "We have to stop them," Kevin said, his voice hardening with resolve. "We have to find a way to expose the traitors in the IMC and rally Earth's defenses before the Zanari's main invasion force arrives." But even as they set to work, a sense of urgency hung over them like a pall. The Zanari were coming and time was running out. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance, and Kevin knew that failure was not an option. They had to succeed, or all would be lost. In the Resistance's hidden base, Kevin and Dr. Sorensen pored over the fragments of the Zanari Codex, their eyes straining in the dim light. They worked with a desperate intensity, knowing that every second brought the Zanari's invasion fleet closer to Earth. Dr. Sorensen's fingers flew across the holographic display, cross-referencing the alien glyphs with ancient Earth languages. Suddenly, she let out a gasp. "Kevin, look at this." The display showed a series of images from the Codex, depicting the Zanari's conquest of a long-forgotten civilization. At the center of each image was a pulsing crystalline artifact, radiating an eerie blue light. "The heart of the void," Dr. Sorensen whispered, her voice tinged with awe and fear. "According to the Codex, it's a device of immense power, capable of bending the fabric of space and time itself. The Zanari used it to enslave entire species, to bend them to their will." Kevin's blood ran cold as he studied the images, and now they want it back. Arya burst into the room, her face taut with urgency. "We have a problem. Our intel suggests that Marcus Keller and his cronies are planning to hand over the heart of the void to the Zanari. They've been promised positions of power in the New World Order." Kevin's fists clenched. "Where is it?" "In a heavily guarded IMC research facility on Earth. We need to get to it before they do." Kevin nodded grimly. "Then that's what we'll do, assemble a team. We're going in." Hours later, Kevin and a hand-picked team of resistance fighters stood outside the IMC facility, hidden in the shadows. They had infiltrated the compound's perimeter, evading patrols and security systems with a combination of skill and stolen access codes. As they made their way deeper into the facility, the resistance fighters encountered unexpected allies, a group of IMC security personnel who had remained loyal to humanity. Together, they fought their way through the corridors, taking down Zanari collaborators with precise shots and coordinated tactics. But as they neared the heart of the facility, they found their path blocked by a familiar figure. Marcus Keller stood before them, flanked by a contingent of heavily armed guards. "Kevin Wells," Keller sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You really thought you could stop us? The Zanari's victory is inevitable. They've been planning this for centuries, seeding our civilization with sleeper agents and manipulating events from behind the scenes." Kevin raised his weapon, his finger hovering over the trigger. "It's not too late, Keller. We can still fight back." Keller laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You fool, the Zanari are already here." As if on cue, the facility's alarms began to blare and the sound of plasma fire echoed through the corridors. The Zanari had breached the facility's defenses, and they were closing in fast. Kevin and his team fought with everything they had, desperately trying to reach the chamber where the heart of the void was being held. But the Zanari forces were relentless, pouring into the facility in endless waves. As they neared the chamber, Kevin caught a glimpse of Keller and his guards, making their escape with the heart of the void. The traitorous CEO had played his final card, leaving Kevin and his team to face the full might of the Zanari onslaught. Kevin gritted his teeth and pushed forward, determination etched on his face. They had to get out of here, had to find a way to stop Keller and the Zanari before it was too late. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance, and failure was not an option. Plasma bolts sizzled past Kevin's head as he dove for cover, his team fighting tooth and nail to carve a path through the Zanari forces. The air was thick with the stench of ozone and burning metal, the floor slick with the blood of both friend and foe. Kevin's mind raced as he tried to come up with a plan, a way to turn the tide of battle. But deep down he knew that they were outmatched and outnumbered. The Zanari's technology was too advanced, their troops too numerous. Just as all seemed lost, a deafening explosion rocked the facility. The resistance fighters looked up to see a gaping hole in the ceiling, and through it, the sleek silhouette of a Zanari warship descending like a monstrous bird of prey. The warship's boarding ramps lowered, and a fresh wave of Zanari warriors poured into the facility, their weapons blazing with searing light. At their head strode a towering figure clad in ornate armor, his eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence. Kevin's blood turned to ice as he recognized the Zanari leader from the Codex. It was Varys, the architect of the Zanari's conquest, the mastermind behind their centuries-long plan to subjugate humanity. Varys's gaze locked onto Kevin, and a cruel smile played across his alien features. He raised his weapon, a pulsing scepter that crackled with dark energy, and leveled it at the human resistance fighters. In that moment, Kevin knew that they had lost. The heart of the void was in enemy hands, and the Zanari's victory was all but assured. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Kevin felt a flicker of defiance, a stubborn refusal to surrender. He looked to his team, to the brave men and women who had fought beside him through hell and back. They met his gaze, their eyes blazing with the same fierce determination. They would not go down without a fight. As the Zanari forces closed in, Kevin raised his weapon and let out a battle cry that echoed through the shattered corridors of the facility. The resistance fighters surged forward, meeting the alien onslaught head-on in a final desperate stand. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they would fight to the bitter end. For Earth, for their fallen comrades, and for the hope of a future free from the Zanari's tyranny, they would give everything they had. No matter the cost, no matter the odds, they would not surrender. Not now, not ever. Plasma fire slammed into the walls around Kevin as he sprinted through the crumbling research facility. The heart of the void clutched tightly against his chest. Behind him, Dr. Sorensen and the remaining resistance fighters fought a desperate rearguard action, buying him precious seconds to escape with the artifact. Kevin burst into the hangar bay, where a battered transport ship awaited. He leapt aboard, slamming his fist against the airlock controls. As the doors hissed shut, he saw Varys striding through the smoke and debris, his eyes locked on the heart of the void. The transport ship rocketed away from the facility, weaving through a gauntlet of Zanari fighters. In the cargo hold, Kevin and his team huddled around the artifact, its eerie blue light pulsing in time with their racing heartbeats. "We did it," Aria breathed, her face streaked with sweat and grime. "We have the heart of the void. Now we can use it to destroy the Zanari once and for all." But Dr. Sorensen shook her head, her expression troubled. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The artifact, it's alive, and it's been manipulating us all along." Kevin felt a chill run down his spine as he stared at the heart of the void. The longer he looked at it, the more he felt its insidious influence worming its way into his mind, whispering dark promises of power and conquest. He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. They had a plan, to lure the Zanari into a trap and unleash the artifact's full power against them. But now, with Dr. Sorensen's revelation, he wasn't so sure. As the transport ship raced towards the Resistance's hidden base, Kevin felt a growing sense of unease. The heart of the void seemed to pulse in his hands, its light flickering and dancing like a living thing. Around him, the other Resistance fighters began to shift and mutter, their eyes darting nervously towards the artifact. Some clutched their weapons tighter, while others seemed to retreat into themselves, their faces blank and expressionless. Dr. Sorensen moved to Kevin's side, her voice low and urgent. "We have to be careful," she warned. "The artifact is already starting to affect us. We need to find a way to contain its power, to control it before it controls us." Kevin nodded grimly. He knew she was right, but he also knew that time was running out. The Zanari invasion force was drawing closer with every passing minute, and they needed to act fast if they were going to have any chance of stopping them. As the transport ship touched down at the Resistance base, Kevin made his decision. He would use the Heart of the Void to defeat the Zanari, no matter the cost, even if it meant sacrificing his own humanity in the process. He gathered his team around him, his voice steady and determined. "Listen up," he said, his eyes blazing with a fierce resolve. "We have one shot at this. We're going to lure the Zanari into a trap and unleash the artifact's full power against them. It's going to be dangerous, and some of us might not make it back. But if we succeed, we'll have saved Earth and all of humanity. Are you with me?" The Resistance fighters nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the stakes, and they were ready to fight to the bitter end. As they prepared for the final confrontation, Kevin felt the Heart of the Void pulsing in his hands, its power seeping into his very being. He could feel it changing him, twisting his thoughts and emotions into something dark and unrecognizable. But he pushed those feelings aside, focusing on the task at hand. The Zanari were coming, and he would be ready for them. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice, he would see this through to the end. The Resistance base became a hive of activity as Kevin and his team worked to set their trap. They rigged explosives and positioned heavy weapons, laying out a deadly gauntlet for the approaching Zanari forces. Dr. Sorensen worked feverishly to unravel the secrets of the Heart of the Void, trying to find a way to harness its power without succumbing to its corrupting influence. But even as she made progress, Kevin could see the toll it was taking on her. The way her eyes seemed to glaze over, and her movements became jerky and erratic. As the final preparations were made, Kevin stood at the center of the base, the Heart of the Void pulsing in his hands. He could feel its power flowing through him, filling him with a dark and terrible strength. Around him, the Resistance fighters took their positions, their weapons trained on the approaching Zanari ships. The air was thick with tension and the smell of ozone, the calm before the storm. And then, with a deafening roar, the Zanari invasion force descended upon the base. Plasma fire rained down from the sky, slamming into the hastily erected defenses and sending clouds of debris flying in all directions. Kevin let out a battle cry, raising the Heart of the Void above his head. The artifact pulsed with blinding light, and a wave of energy swept out from it, engulfing the Zanari ships and sending them tumbling from the sky. But even as the Zanari fell, Kevin could feel the artifact's power consuming him, burning away his humanity and leaving only a cold, ruthless shell in its place. He barely registered the Resistance fighters falling around him, cut down by the Zanari's relentless onslaught. His mind was consumed by the Heart of the Void, by the whispers of power and conquest that filled his thoughts. Through the chaos and destruction, he caught sight of Varys, the Zanari leader. The alien warrior was striding through the battle, his eyes fixed on the Heart of the Void. Kevin felt a surge of hatred and rage, a primal urge to destroy his enemy once and for all. He charged forward, the artifact clutched tight in his hands. The two enemies met in a clash of blades and energy, their weapons flashing and sparking in the smoky air. They fought with a brutal intensity, each driven by the corrupting influence of the Heart of the Void. Around them the battle raged on, Resistance fighters and Zanari warriors falling in droves. Explosions rocked the base, sending flames and debris flying in all directions. In the end, it was Kevin who emerged victorious, standing over the broken body of Varys. But as he looked down at his fallen foe, he felt no sense of triumph or satisfaction. Instead, he felt only a hollow emptiness, a yawning void where his humanity had once been. The heart of the void had consumed him, body and soul, leaving him a mere shell of his former self. As the last of the Zanari ships fell from the sky and the smoke began to clear, Kevin stood alone amidst the ruins of the base. The resistance fighters who had survived the battle looked to him for guidance, for leadership. But Kevin could not meet their eyes. He knew that he was no longer the man they had followed into battle, the man who had fought so hard to save Earth and all of humanity. He was something else now, something twisted and dark, forever bonded to the heart of the void. And as he slipped away into the shadows, haunted by the whispers of power and conquest that filled his mind, he knew that the battle for Earth's fate was far from over. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.